All right, guys, welcome to the Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and today I'm going to be talking about a few different things here, but mainly Iron Lung and character work in general. Iron Lung is worth the cost of admission. I paid about 15 bucks. It's the modern world and so on and so forth. I paid about 15 bucks and I didn't regret it. Bought popcorn and I enjoyed it. Um, my mortgage is behind, but you know how things go. So one of the things though that struck me as a major misstep um, is the show don't tell of Simon the convict calling himself, excuse me, Simon the butcher. There's several different problems. Um, there's several different problems that come up. When you show and don't tell, or tell and don't show, rather. And that's pretty simply put, the audience might not believe everything that goes on. Now, unless I blanked out a scene in the movie, there's no actual scene where Markiplier's character, Simon the Convict, acts in a way that you could call um, butcher like. He's accused of stuff, and maybe it's sort of more subtle uh, uh, character work, which I'll describe in a second. I'm going to write it down here so I don't forget. But there's all kinds of character work that you can do with somebody who you want to have a reputation. But the biggest thing is that if a character has a reputation, that reputation must be earned. This isn't super intelligent deep lore stuff. This is simple writing, but it requires a bit of training to grok in a way that other parts of writing just simply aren't. The one of the benefits of writing is that you can always introduce things. The problem is that depending on when and how you introduce things, they may or may not have an effect with the audience. For example, uh, the idea that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father is happens as a reveal incredibly late in the story, which is at the end of the second movie of Star Wars. So that's a big reveal. That's a huge reveal. But the problem is that it doesn't, like when do they actually bring up that Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker might have a father? Well, no, actually, there's many different benefits, to this reveal that were set up beforehand. But first, it's like if where the point is actually there's about two movies worth of direct references that build up to the reveal that is contextualized by the reveal, not necessarily revealed by the reveal, right? So what are the contexts for revealing Luke, I am your father? I am your father. Uh, the reveal is that one, Luke is an orphan raised by his aunt and uncle. That's already a big thing. Uh, Two, his Anakin Skywalker is already referenced quite a few times um, as a Jedi. Luke is a Jedi. Darth Vader is a Jedi. Uh, Darth Vader is a creature of the Clone Wars. Different things that Anakin Skywalker has done, um, Darth Vader has also done, but it's not much referenced. It shows up in like things like the Imperial scene, how Palpatine talks. Luke's also how he interacts with Darth Vader. There's something there. And then, of course, when the reveal happens and Darth Vader reveals it, it contextualizes a lot of the things there that are already in the back of our head, so it doesn't actually violate how we as consumers of the media interact with the world. Um, how it interact with that world. If somebody says, "Well, that just comes from nowhere," well, actually, Luke is an orphan. Obi-Wan Kenobi, a very powerful individual, is hiding him. He has the same powers. Um, his father did XYZ and Darth Vader did XYZ, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's something that could be discerned if you had the context for it, or if you had the conception that such a thing would be possible. Unfortunately, in Iron Lung, Simon the Butcher doesn't quite get the same treatment. Um, and there's several missteps that the writer took for this specific point that kind of got stuck in my craw because I do spend a lot of time on character work for my characters. I'm very careful with Jack Morrow's reputation. He has a reputation of a monster hunter. So what do I show him doing? He hunts monsters and he hunts them as gruesomely as the monsters themselves hunt. If he walks in and plants an axe in a werewolf's head, people remember that. Psychos, it's not psychopathic, but it's like, like psychotic for him to just walk into a werewolf's lair and start killing werewolves. He gets a reputation of that kind. And then I use that reputation in other ways. Certain characters and plots and ideas come from his savagery, but they don't come from him being a savage. He's actually a very civilized man, but they come from his savage fighting. But then also he has other reputations that he's trying to build. He wants to be more of a kind of middle class, upper class kind of guy who's taking care of his community and wants to build these sort of things. But the thing is that it conflicts with this, so conflicts with him hunting monsters, and so it even though I'm not really building the tension of that kind of life, what happens is that if I'm not careful, people will assume that these things are just, tells rather than shows. Well, of course, he wants to invest money into his local businesses, and these people are renting stuff from him because his grandfather, who fought the Nazis and great grandfather fought the Nazis and may have carted off a whole bunch of Nazi gold, bought that land. But due to the nature of the secretive nature of the monster hunting work, it's secret, right? How do I move that on from there? And that's going to be one of the tasks I have writing his character into season 4, as well as a little bit of season 3. Make it logical. He talks about it. He supports a barbecue restaurant because he loves barbecue. That's a natural progression of the character. There's no such thing as a vegan monster hunter, right? And if there is one, that'd be pretty fucking whack. It'd be a whack thing. It doesn't the like maybe you could make that character from like, yeah, bud, I butcher werewolves. I see their guts and innards. I don't want to look at meat. But that's a sort of trauma response rather than a real thing. And they would, they need to like compensate for the lost proteins. So let's talk about Iron Lung more directly here. It's a great movie. I want to be clear. If you're like it's bed of Superversive Press believes it's a shit, Superversive Radio believes it's a shit movie because no. This is me talking about like a flaw in a diamond, or a garnet. Still a precious gem, and not quite a diamond, baby. It's not Mad Max Fury Road, which is deliciously complex in its own way, and stupid. The ending is so stupid. She ruins her own utopia, her kingdom. It just wastes all the stuff, but it doesn't matter. Uh, so let's go over the basics, right? Is a reputation justified? We have show and tell. We have the events for specific reputation. In other words, we see them specifically. That's a show. Other characters believe it. That's also a show, even though it doesn't feel like a show. If I say, I'm a big man, I'm going to throw you out physically, and people believe me on it, until somebody tests me and prove I can't do it, my size as a person and the fact that I'm known to work out and I have a gripper that is in my hands that is over 100 pounds and I when I'm working security, I play with it and exercise my grip. It becomes performative, but people believe it, and other characters can reference it. Don't mess with that guy. He's pretty big. You know, if I was like, oh, I'm so tough, I'm so tough. You don't mess with me. I'm so tough. That becomes dramatic. And when I get knocked out, it becomes a lie. Uh, if I said, oh, I'm not that strong, it becomes true, but I'm denying it. If I say, oh, I'm not that strong and I'm not strong, it's just a deny. That's true. There's no humility to it, really. It's just an acceptance of what's true. Then, of course, there's also tells, right? What is tell in a story? A title is the biggest simple tell there is. It's the Marquis Michael the Savage, except Michael is this like humble dude who hasn't picked up a sword ever. And he doesn't have a savage tongue either. They just call him that for pure irony. That's a tell. And it's a bad tell. Like pure irony doesn't quite work. Talking about past events. You killed so many, you lied to so many, you did this, you did that to so many. That's another tell. Uh, then we have things like by medium, right? So film shows by actively showing you Jack Morrow hunting a werewolf and killing. However, if people like if people are talking in a bar and go Jack Morrow killed a werewolf, well, it's a film. Just show him killing a werewolf. Oh, but it's expensive. It's the medium. In literature, you can talk about these things and then and then cut to it, but you can also tell the story within a story. It's two guys in a bar, and one of them tells a story about how Jack Morrow saved them from a werewolf. Then you also have a character from the first person, their beliefs about themselves. So, in other words, Jack Morrow's thinking to himself, I hunt werewolves. And then he hunts a werewolf. But like the statement is the tell, and then you reinforce it with a show. It's words versus deeds, right? What do people say about themselves versus what do people believe about themselves from others? It's in the case of Simon the convict, it's violence versus repentance. He has a reputation for violence from being captured from the destruction of Filament Station. However, it's very clear that he has never gone, I'm Simon the Butcher or whatever. In fact, the people don't even have his real name. They don't know he's called Simon. He doesn't. He's just convict X, or whatever his number was. And also, there's another tell that's less used, but certainly very important, and that's is it being used to taunt a character? In the movie Iron Lung, it's used to taunt Simon. Oh, you want this piece? You want to live, but you're a butcher. Like the monster is kind of doing it. But the problem is that it's like those two guys talking about it in a bar during a movie, right? It's not good for the medium. If there was a scene where he's like killing kids and all this stuff, I must have missed it. It must have been I must have been like getting whatever, but like it's never referenced until it comes up in the last quarter of the movie, maybe last third of the movie. I'll be fair. And when it comes to it, it's no, one of the things that's, I'll put it here, is it proven true? Is the character uh, accurate and accurate to the reputation? Uh, is it proven true and accurate to the reputation? And my argument is that Simon the Butcher is not accurate to the character that is provided to the audience. Again, it could have uh, it could have been done easily. It's a movie after all. Again, maybe I'm always willing to say I blanked out something, but in reality, I don't think I did at all. And if it was just one scene at the beginning, it's not brought up again until it's time to do it, which isn't bad writing, but at the same time, it needs at least one more reinforcement for the audience to remember, and it just isn't there. Now, don't get me wrong, we have plenty of flashbacks to his past, and I'm not talking about flashbacks here. We have plenty of flashbacks to the character's past. Namely, oh, do something, the explosion. I tried to stop it, which isn't quite earned, but it's all right. It's not the worst. How he acts proves that to be true, that you could believe that he has a sacredness of life about him. Uh, which again goes against Simon the Butcher thing. So, if a character has a reputation, are their actions true and accurate to that reputation, a title? So, if somebody's called the Butcher, that speaks of a disregard for life, a love of blood, and a willingness to murder your fellow man. It's a very clear title. It's a very clear reputation that you can have. If if a character repents of it, like Simon the convict is in the middle of, he um, can't act. If he repents of it, he actually would act in the way that he does. But the thing is that you can also act like that if you just have a sacredness of life in general, right? So it overlaps too much with other things. If you believe life has value, if you want to survive, there's a lot that can be done that looks like this stuff, but doesn't need to be this stuff, if you get me. Um, let's see here. So, like the events that the character goes through, whether they're told or not, if the audience doesn't see it, it becomes more and more unearned as the medium goes forward. If somebody goes, it's the last quarter of the book, it's Amelia Monster Hunter. She hunts monsters, and it's a little 4'11 slip of a girl who like kung fu's monsters into bloody mist. And Jack's like so enamored of her. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's everyone would call that a Mary Sue. It wouldn't be justified in the story or the logic of the characters or anything else, right? But if you have, her show up and she's in a flower shop, oh, it's Amelia the flower shop girl, except she's secretly a kung fu monster hunter. That's like woman's young adult fic where's her two suitors, the Duke and the Count. She's not good enough for either of them. And she's so plain Jane, don't you know? Uh, her boobs get in the way more than not, bigger than her head. No way, that's the male fantasy. Excuse me. She's so plain, and she never has time to put work into her, appearance, etc. You know what I'm talking about. I love Iron Lung quite a bit. I might. I don't know if I'll go see it again, but I'll probably rent it again. I'd love to see it with other people. But when it comes time for the climax, I wonder if the butcher bit was added in to explain his violent actions um, against the monster. Well, the thing is that actually he's proven that he's willing to do things, even unpleasant things, to survive. It's proven in Filament Station. It's proven when he about the half of the movie. It's proven when he does the X-ray gun and irradiates those guys who were jerks, but they didn't really deserve it. So, in other words, he already has proven that he's willing to do things to survive, even horrible things, even hurtful things, right? So it's already well established that he'll like go crazy and do stuff to survive. With that being the case, my argument is that Simon the Butcher is a bridge too far. It's not necessary. There might be reasoning for it, which I'm not going to deny, but at the same time, I'm not gonna sit there and say that it was earned, right? A fledgling writer, who's beyond their who's cut their teeth but not necessarily come into maturity, might think it's necessary to justify extreme action from a character. But the thing is that actually, if you take out the Simon the Butcher bit, the pieces are all there. I'm not saying, hey, this is bad. I don't think Markiplier or anyone else involved will ever see this, but you know, uh, the building blocks that you were playing with were sufficient for what you were doing. It uh, uh, created something that got stuck in my craw, pushing it forward, but didn't actually upset the movie or the building blocks. It's like I'm just talking about this because it's interesting to talk about this in the same way that it's a flaw of the movie. But for you writers out there, there's a currency that you can pay for these things to happen. Gaston being a mighty hunter isn't actually shown in the Disney movie in a direct way. He doesn't like go out and shoot a deer or anything like that. But what he does do is that he has a hunting lodge full of stuff. I think he's got some geese he's coming in with in one of the scenes. There's enough to show without having you see him pull the gun trigger that he is a mighty hunter. He looks the part, he acts the part, he has the hunting lodge, and he's seen with dead animals. Even though it's kept on the down low because it is a children's film. Um, that's a good way to do it. And then when it comes time for him to have direct conflict with the beast, uh, it it falls out in a way that, of course, everything slips in. But if he didn't have the hunting lodge, if he didn't look like he hunted and lived outside and had a vital life, if he didn't have that wonderful chin, mm, if he didn't have all the accoutrement of a hunter and people pointing it out and interacting with him in certain ways, it wouldn't be earned. It's the same way with uh, Prince Adam, how he's developed his character, the Beast. He starts out in certain ways, but in the end, he shows off and has an act of kindness, even though he knows it's going to hurt him. In that way, we know that he's savage, but he's not a complete savage, if you know what I mean. He's not total Bluebeard. Uh, Characters who have this sort of need for a reputation, but also have to take action, enjoy the benefit of having the performance and the drama, and whether or not it's true or not, without having to have too much dialogue about it. While the monster is right to taunt Simon the convict in Iron Lung about his past and the people he's killed, or not necessarily people he's killed, but the people he's responsible for the deaths are, that's the right move. Giving him a title is not necessarily the right move in every situation. In fact, what it does is it creates a need for that reputation to be post hoc justified. And if you don't go back and do the legwork, it doesn't quite work out. Now, again, someone reading this from a non-writer perspective, and again, this is just me griping about something I'm actively calling good. Uh, the writer, if the writer wants to do something cool, like calling someone the butcher, which is Trey cool, uh, you can't do that from without also going back in the work and making sure that there's like some sort of kumite he's surviving. Um, it's one of those things where there's there's necessary legwork that needs to be done for the different things that you want to do with it. And if you don't do it, it will be stuck in the craw of your watchers or readers or whatever. And it starts with, like, the writers and the critical characters like myself. Then it will eventually delve into readers. And because you're not like there for the sex scenes or whatever, like pornography is its own thing because it's not an art. Um, you have to justify every little thing. In pornography, you don't have to justify why the woman orders an Italian sausage pizza at 10 a.m. You just know that that's what's going to happen because you're there for the titillation, not for the quality of the work. If somebody goes, "Why did the lifeguard show up in the man's bathroom?" Or whatever, you're losing the plot. You are in there for the sin and the shame. You're not in there to justify why a man leads a lifeguard in his own bubble bath or why a man's taking a bubble bath. It leaves open questions to these actors in that industry. uh but he's such a lady killer. Yeah, lady killers 9 through 17 were pretty good. What? uh why would he be in a bubble bath? I need 10 pages of backstory for this. Uh, no. There's also some things like romance, which is, a step above. It's emotional porn of a kind, where uh, the excuse me. Sorry about that. I keep getting stuff stuck in my nose, the dust and the books and the such, all the way up the sinuses. So characters who are participating in a romance, right? I'm going up the genres, up the quality of works now. There's actually no need to put too much description as to why something will happen. The disgraced noble, of course, buys the abandoned building next to the beautiful but plain woman who just needs a man to love, with hair down to his shoulder blades and pecs, carved from Fabio himself. These things. Um, have to happen in a certain way, but they don't actually need that much description. How in the world is a noble who's disgraced and impoverished buying, this last, mansion on the mountaintops or whatever that would clearly otherwise be prime real estate? Um, there's logic gaps to it that don't quite work out, but it doesn't matter because the logic isn't actually there. You are there for the interactions between the two characters, as well as a certain amount of Victorian getting things rightness. Writing a Victorian romance, you better have the bodices correct, if you get me. If you're ripping bodices and it's Victorian times, they better be the correct bodice. You got to use that whalebone. I don't care what you think about hunting whales. Then you move up to something like, young adult or young kids literature, where you do have to have a logic for how these things interact with, but you don't actually have to think too deeply of it. It's one step above the romance, where you can just do things, and as long as the forms are correct, it's fine. You do need a logic as to why these things happen. You can't have random circumstance. The readers will reject that. In fact, they might be a little bit sensitive to it because they're developing their brains, and they might be, drinking down what will eventually become experience. So when you have Percy Hero, uh, oh my goodness, I just realized Percy is like Perseus. Am I stupid? Am I just stupid? Percy, the Olympic. This hurts me. I'm experiencing physical pain. I'm so sorry. Anyway, point is that there has to be a certain amount of sense to be made of characters. Why are the heroic or empowered characters meeting each other? They have to go to a school where they're all in the same place. or they're in a league, or they're going to be dragged together by somebody else. Like there has to be a whole lot of logic that comes. I'm going to be tripping over the fact that I never realized Percy and Perseus were similar, and that's probably why he chose Percy. I just thought it was a dumb name. Uh, I'm not going to have an existential crisis on stream. I'm just not. Uh, you have to have a reasoning and a logic for it, for why these characters interact with each other in this manner. My Hero Academia, you have the school. The school is more than the setting. The school is actually covering a multitude of why these characters interact with each other and continue to interact with each other. Why are the hunters for Pinkerton's Ghost together? Well, they work for the same monster hunting company. Same with Monster Hunter International. There is a government program for killing monsters that pays out tons of money, and so there are businesses that take these government contracts. Blah 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 blah. Then the next level up, you actually have to have deep logic for it. This is like the thriller, right? It goes beyond the sci-fi novel of, sorry, no, the next level would be the sci-fi novel where you have technologies that have to be explained to a certain point. If it's a hard sci-fi novel, if it's soft, having the hyperdrive and the shield generator and the anti-grav plate is fine. If it's medium like Star Wars, then you have medium like Star Trek. Actually, it uses a certain type of molecule whose radiation produces a lot of power, and latium, which is a sort of power measurement, has to be in gold, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not that deep into Star Trek lore, but point is that there's more explanation for things in Star Trek than there is in Star Wars. And then, of course, you have hard sci-fi like Ben Bova or Andy Weir, who have explanations for all the tech. It's just advanced enough for the tech to exist. In other words, let's say that the only thing stopping us from having warp tech is a sufficient power source. They would have a sufficient power source based on the technology that is explained beforehand. So, in other words, we have fusion generators of a kind. They would have advanced fusion generators that happen to produce enough power for the warp drive to happen. So they would take us knowing, like, because there's always an article every year or so. We figured out warp drive. They would say, oh, it's a tachyon wave that causes the gravitational milieu to have a wave, and we just come in the shadow of the wave, which is necessarily faster than light. But pump warp drive. Then above, and that's like where you actually have to be very careful. If Doctor Chandra, whatever, has all these degrees, they better not be from an Indian university that gives out fake degrees, and he has to prove that he knows his stuff in story and out of story. He's on the first ship of the warp drive. He has to prove that he knows the technology behind it, and the author has to be very careful in how he does it. This isn't Star Wars. This isn't Star Trek. He can't hand wave the adventure. The character has to know things beyond the two levels I've described earlier. This is the Mohs scale of sci-fi hardness. Once you're at super hard, you have to have backgrounds and more than the reputation, right? You have to have more than the titles and the doctorhood and stuff like that. You can play on it, but the thing is that you can't do it at the last quarter of the movie. You have to have it where he has this weird assistant who's very smart but doesn't talk. And the assistant is actually the ones who gives the reputation and stuff like that. And Chandra is just stealing the work. That's a pretty good plot line that fulfills Chandra having a reputation but not actually earning it because he has a mechanism by which he earns the reputation. Lastly, then you have the very gritty, thriller types where actually you do need things to make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, people are not going to like it. You will anger your readers, and they will not come back for the second book. You might as well change your name and write a different way. It's like getting science wrong in a science fiction of supreme hardness. But the thing is that people like those stories just because they're like that, and it makes them feel smart, and they kind of enjoy it, and there's a flow to it and stuff like that. But the nerds will get offended, but it's not as bad as thrillers, because those have a ton of normie participation, and normies talk. So when you're dealing with something that's a very large portion of the market, if the market turns against you, you're just kind of stuck. You have to have both the show and the tell working in perfect order for it to work together. Jason Bourne is the biggest example of this. He has a ton of reputation from people hunting him, uh, and then titles and everything like that, and other people reference it. Oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. And then we see the events. He has the ability to do the crazy fight stuff. Other characters believe it uh, once they see him work, and once they're told about it by others. Other characters reference it. So you have the titles and talking about past events combined with the show of people referencing it, and then it's performative and dramatic and it's true. And the character denies it, but kind of grows into it over the course of the story. So you still have a very nice level of competent growth, but at the same time, the character uh, uh, has the things that make him special. So it's true and accurate to the reputation. That's the kind of progression that you have as you go through different genres. Sci-fi as Iron Lung as a genre is in the Star Wars, Star Trek category. And I don't mean that, if you're like, oh, well, it's not anything like Star Wars, Star Trek. I mean in the sense of audience participation and need to explain things. It doesn't need to have no explanation like Star Wars does, but it does need build up and support, because there's a whole nother level of things that I haven't talked about, and that's genre in the sense of suspense and whatnot. I talked about it in thrillers and sci-fi and romance, but there's more. It's a very complex thing. In the sense of horror, you don't need to explain everything, and he doesn't, thank God, because that would have ruined it for real. Um, but you have to have a certain amount of, I don't know. So, like, one of the things that are ticking me off about Iron Lung is that people assume that the big monster thing is the only monster in the room. In the end, that's not true. There are at least four actually different entities running around. There's the first monster we see, then there's the globular monster with the big mouth, there's the light, and then there's the blood itself. There's, excuse me. So the first monster is the thing that throws him around and then disappears. It's not intimidated by the light. It might be the same monster as number two, but it acts differently. And it doesn't act. And number two fucks around too much for it to be the same as how number one acted in the first half of the film. Just saying. The first monster seems to be willing to try and destroy the thing. And the thing with monster number two is that it destroyed number Expedition 8. I don't know. Maybe it has a cycle where it has to taunt more. I'm not willing to think too deeply about it. Point is that there seems to be a difference in action between one and two, and it creates a nice stopping point. Then you have the light. The light is part of the quiet rapture. Whether it dragged people into it or if it sent humanity away, it doesn't need to be said. But it's something of its own that's separate to the monster number two that clearly serves it. Then you have the blood itself. As leaks develop within the ship, Markiplier's, Simon the Convict's face starts to dissolve, his flesh dissolves. There's a horrible scene that's well done, where he touches some of the vines with his bare hands, and it infests his hands, and he has to pull himself free, and one of his hands gets stuck with it. It's a great scene. I like it. But the thing is that it kind of makes it silly when he goes, "I'm Simon. You want Simon the Butcher? Come on," sort of thing. When in actuality is that I'm not gonna. It's hard to do these things on the fly, but it's like, I'm going to survive this. I'm going to help humanity. I'm going to make filaments. Not, I don't know about that one, but I'm going to do what I need to do to get this done. I'm going to save people. I'm going to save humanity. I'm going to redeem myself. Like there's ways to write this where you don't have to start talking about different things when the monster brings it up psychically, like 15 minutes or so before. It's still kind of like, that's kind of weird. Oh, you killed so many of your brothers, you got a ton of blood in your hands. And if it's just a taunt, it's not clearly made out just to be a taunt for the deaths of Filament Station, right? It's not just something that is being used to torment the character. There's a way to do that. It doesn't quite act like that. Like, a way to do it is that I have a character in one of the stories. She can see the future. She can see her own death. And she knows that if she doesn't choose a future where she doesn't die, she is going to die a horrible death. But the problem is that she has to literally put herself in the jaws of the lion and convince the lion not to chew. So it's a horrible situation to be in. She has to, she is stuck with the lion. And this is metaphorical about the characters. Uh, so it's a torment to her. She knows that if she, dances to the tune wrong, because she has free will and she can fuck up her own future. Relatable, am I right? Uh, because she has, a way to she can misstep in the dance if she's not careful or if she gives into panic. He'll just kill her because she's a threat. All of her siblings have tried to kill him. Why is she any different? It's better to kill her now before whatever trap she represents is sprung, and he's going to get away with it. Uh, he's not even going to feel guilty about it. Again, he's had to kill other of her siblings because they tried to kill him, and they all came to him. They all tried to kill him. Why in the world should this girl be any different? So that's what she's kind of going across. And if he catches her out in the wild, he's just going to kill her and not worry about it. It's like, oh, yeah, you're like the other ones who try to kill me. Blah blah blah. That's the logic. She knows that he's not in a healthy state, but at the same time, if she does things out of order, she'll die, right? So that causes it to be tormented. He goes, oh, you're like your father, you're Pike spawn, you're this, you're that. That's also tormenting. But the thing is that I made sure to establish that, one, if you know the lore, there's other characters like her, who her father fathered, and two, she has she's following the rules of the story where she has repented of the evil of her family, but to get that reward, it kind of she has to kind of not necessarily earn her salvation from God, who is a character in this, but she has to earn her safety by convincing this warrior not to do it, which again is like someone jumping into the lion's den to convince the lion not to eat her. It's hard to do. It's hard to experience that. So when the unpleasantness starts, she's double tormented. She sees all the ways that she can die. She sees all the ways that he's just going to kill her, and she's never even going to get a burial because he's just going to, do some weird, not magic stuff to it, but he has ways of disposing of bodies that the authorities aren't going to find. Um, it might be a sin, it might be a murder, but at the same time, it's a pattern that he has to follow. And if he doesn't follow it, he's going to get shot. Someone's going to kill him. And then his friends are going to die. And or kidnapped or tormented, or they themselves will experience great things and he won't be able to defend them. Like there's logic behind it that comes to it. If somebody has a guard dog that's going to fight and kill wolves, a wolf pup walking up and begging to be made a dog isn't going to is going to be difficult for that guard dog to take care of. And it's worse and it compounds it. And then I'm going to bring it back later where a character is going to do to him what he did to her. He lifted her up by the hair, to be clear, and threatened her because he wasn't convinced that she wasn't going to try and kill him. Uh, and he's going to do, so what do you think of this? How do you feel about it? And his response, because I have a despair arc for this character, is going to be, those in power may do what they can to those who are under them. I am in your power. Do what you will. And the guy throws him away in disgust, because that's not how a free man acts. It's a man in despair acts, which is disgusting once it becomes so evident. What do you mean like this? You've got bodies stacked, and you act in despair. And so I'm mirroring the character arc of one with the character arc of another, while also keeping their individual characters in line with each other, so that when you come to it, this is a writing medium, so it's a little different than Iron Lung, but you get what I'm saying. So you have the character experiencing it, and then another character also experiencing it, and it's set up in such a way that the experiences mirror while keeping their character arcs, so that nothing is pure show, but I'm sorry, nothing is pure tell, but but I'm doing the telling through the showing in a way that creates tension and a satisfying story. In the end, the two characters reconcile with each other, because once the character realizes that, oh, she's serious, she isn't actually going to try and kill me like all her other siblings, he is able to move to a state of forgiveness for what she is. Uh, it's hard to say, oh, you should be perfectly rational, bud. You should absolutely act in a certain way and treat her like she's an individual person, when people don't act like individuals. One of the things in Filament Station, in Iron Lung, is that it's treated as kind of a cult. And Simon the Convict has rituals. When he sees that he had a brother go down, brother quote unquote, go down in the same sub and leave messages, and he left this dead seed trapped in glass, as a sign of their, you know, cult, I guess I'll say. He has, moments where he reflects and even kind of prays for the person's soul, or their ghost or whatever. Then with things like, um, how he interacts and how Simon repents, it says that there's something that he deeply regrets. The problem is that the regret is answered by all the things that have happened already. So, with going back to my example where the character arcs mirror each other and they interact with each other, because this character has had to kill all these different, people in different ways who have deserved it, he thinks before, any sign of it, that he has to do it again. The only thing that stays his hand is the fact that she has been sending messages in chalk where he would find them. So he's like, still, teeth bared, fur up, but he's able to stop himself and let her talk. It's where the telling and the showing mingle that the best writing can come out. In reality, if there had been a different solution for the viciousness that Simon shows in the last scenes, it would have been better to find it, because then the reputation would not feel as performative. It would be proper drama, and it wouldn't feel like a bit of a lie. If you see a man acting meek and humble throughout the story, he has to have moments where he's vicious. And there are moments where he's vicious, like when he does it, pushes the X-ray camera thing on those people, who may or may not deserve it, whatever. It's a radiation gun, etc. But the thing is that it's an accident, and he repents of it immediately, right? If he was a butcher, he'd be like, "Fuck you guys, you deserve it," or something like that. He would act differently than how he acts. He'd be like, "You guys deserve it for treating me like this. This is just like this." And blah blah blah. Like there would be character differences that would shine out in the course of the story. In reality, the best writing, and quite frankly, it's good writing in general, like in Iron Lung, right? The best writing would be to have this flow from beginning to end that creates this expectation and acceptance of it in the same way that I am your father is not excuse me is a shock, but it doesn't offend the senses. So too, going Simon the Butcher should have not shocked and not offended the senses. It's one of those things where it stands out because Iron Lung actually has some really good writing to it. That Iron Lung has some good writing to it that actually, how do I want to put it? So because Iron Lung is such a solid piece of work overall, bad writing sticks out more. So when you have something that's solid, if the writing has a flaw to it, it will actually stick out more than if you have bad writing and then there's some good writing in it. If there's a mix of bad and good writing, it'll create something that's very serviceable. But if you have something that has good writing and then there's a really bad scene in it, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's why I wanted to talk about reputation, showing and telling, and all this other stuff, and how to use it. Next week, we forgot last week when we announced the stuff that it's Super Bowl Sunday. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Um, Bad Bunny, yeah, my sister had a rabbit called Midnight, and when he would kind of pee on people when we had him over for church if we let him pet him. So that was pretty Bad Bunny. Though I heard that he blew out his knees doing one of his shows. Please, Ice, Ice, hear me. Donald Trump, hear me. Arrest Bad Bunny and deport him on the deport him from this Super Bowl Sunday stage in a trebuchet, and my life is yours. Zeus. um, I'm sorry. Ooh. All right, guys. Um, Thank you for joining us. Next week, we might have a guest. I'm going to look for some guests. Raconteur Press reached out to me recently with some stuff, and I have some open invites to people. Uh, um, and we'll just see where it goes.